there's a lot left unsaid.
Yeah.
There's a lot left unsaid when it comes to the hiring. And let's just roll with it. Let's just run the podcast.
Play VT.
Play VT. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about the hiring thing. I think last week, obviously, we had to cut it short because I've got this space booked for an hour when I'm recording. So we have it for another hour now. But I think the topic of conversation was recruitment, hiring, and what we would do in the modern landscape to do that. So let's pick up where we left off. You said you had some thoughts on it this morning in the gym, Leigh, during your GM hours. What came to mind?
Yeah, so through our previous conversation on the last podcast and through our coaching group as well, hearing about what they're currently going through in terms of team, because there's a hot topic right now, right? Everybody's afraid to lose team. I feel like there's a bit of a barbershop and salon apocalypse going on where people are going out and doing their own thing, and barbershops in particular, maybe not so much salons, but I don't think barbershops have put strong enough systems and processes into retention, into team retention over the last 6-7 years, because the barbershop world has been on a bit of a bull run. So it was a business idea on a rising tide, right? So when a business idea is on a rising tide, it kind of drives itself. The ship just drives itself because it's popular, it's fun, it's making money. Like everybody, it's a cool thing to do. Everybody wants to do it, right? So I have compassion for that. Whereas shops not having retention systems in place, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but well, it kind of is. If you want your business to survive, there's no like judgment on it. You know, obviously you don't know what you don't know, and you can't be aware of something that you can't be responsible for something that you're not aware of. But I think it's super important that if barbershop owners and salon owners want to retain their teams right now and their talent, they're going to have to do something about it, because just the assumption of, oh, well, I provide a space and, you know, they should just want to work. And because the rhetoric that we hear is, oh, people are just lazy, they don't want to work. It's like, well, not really. Everybody has to work and needs to work because they need money. What's missing is the owners taking a bit of responsibility and saying, hey, you know what? Like, I actually haven't put a retention system in place. Like, I have no idea what the hell is going on. So that was kind of where my mind went. But then that was a summary of what we spoke about in the previous podcast. This morning when I was at the gym, I was thinking, okay, something deeper is that most people don't even have a hiring and a firing process. Like from our coaching conversations, most people hire on a whim out of necessity. They're like, let's just clutch at straws. I'm just going to hire on a whim and just pray that they fit the bill. And then most people fire on a whim as well. Like, oh, I've had enough of this person. They're not playing up to standard, so I'll just get rid of them. And so that's what I would love to talk about today is hiring and firing processes. And for anybody listening who's an owner, do you have them? Because they're really important. I think they're super important. And especially on the firing side, if you're firing or if there's someone, it's not even just firing, it's if someone's leaving as well. Do you have a process? You have a chance to do a heroic save. Like, you have a moment to save that person if you really like them and you really value them as part of your team. So that's why it came to mind. You know, it's one thing having an internal system to create great talent and kind of keep them on board when they're in there, but I think there's something on either end as well, which is like the hiring process and the firing process. So I'd love to just talk about our kind of general ideas on that today.
Yeah, let's start at the retention piece, because barbering and hairdressing, I think hairdressing does a better job of it than barbering based on the kind of classic models of barbering. You know, walk-ins, all of that kind of stuff. Like, appointments are kind of a new thing in the relative grand scheme of barbering. And there's a saying that we use quite a bit with our coaching clients, and it's not always about looking for new clients. You might just need to do a better job with the clients that you have. And it's the same thing with team. There's not an abundance of them out there. So you got to do a good job with the people that you have. And the first thing to focus on is finding good people, but then having a great system for them to be a part of, and giving them input, hearing them, seeing them, understanding them, not just seeing them as a hair-cutting robot. And I think that's what happens in a lot of cases. You know, we've seen it now. We've been around thousands of barbers, around thousands of barbershops. A lot of it is just outcome-based and outcome-focused, rather than we're actually creating something great here for ourselves and for the people who come and interact with us as a business. So that's huge. The retention piece is the number one focus. And going back to last week's podcast, I think we covered the question of like, what's more important to a barbershop business? Is it the team or is it the clients? And you'll know what kind of leader you have depending on how they answer that question. So you'll know what kind of leader is leading a barbershop in the way that they answer that question. Both are necessary, you know, both are important. But as the leader, what's your most important role? The most important role is to look after the team, so then the team will look after the clients. If you build a team, the team will build the business. So that's just a recap as well on last week's podcast. But yeah, there's also something that I kind of picked up in there that you said, and I would love to kind of deepen it a little bit further on like just hiring on a whim. The whole hiring on a whim thing is really interesting because people hire out of defense rather than hiring out of attack. And it's like they're trying to just cover the costs of this week, next month, and not thinking about the bigger picture. Now, if you have somebody in your team that's not a good fit for your team, and you can afford to take the financial hit without the business going under, I think it's a pretty good idea that you as the leader step up and maybe cover some of that income in the meantime whilst you look for someone else. Like, you should never not be looking for more team. And it's not like you have to blatantly call it out. What I'm trying to say is like, you can just be attracting them through your brand and through your marketing and just by doing great stuff and being consistent. You know, we never ever, in the previous company we were working at, in the barbershop, we never had an issue with people coming and wanting to do work based on how we were showing up. And we made the business attractive enough that people wanted to come. Like, the academy aspect of it was very attractive. The extracurricular stuff was very attractive. The fact that you were getting paid to learn, essentially, was very attractive. So the question really is it's less about what's available in the market and who's out there in terms of like looking for team or looking for staff or whatever you say. It's more taking the responsibility of your own brand and making your business attractive enough that people want to come in. Because let's just give an example. Yesterday on one of our calls, we had one of our coaching clients asking a question about somebody who wanted to leave. We won't go into too much detail because that's a private matter, but there was somebody who was looking to move on from a shop that he was a business partner in. And on the surface, the symptom is the person leaving, but it's not the core issue. It's not the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is that there's nobody queuing up to get in to fill the space. And that's a brand thing. Now, yesterday when that was brought up, I mentioned, do you think this is more of like a brand thing? But I think what we were looking to do in the call was put a Band-Aid over it for the meantime, because there was more complex details involved in the situation. But the core root of the issue and the root cause, it's not that the person's leaving, it's the fact that nobody else is wanting to join or lining up and wanting to join. That's what I'd be focusing on. And that's a bigger play. It's a longer term project, but that's the thing that the leader has to do because the team aren't going to do it.
Yep.
They're not going to grow your business. Nobody else is going to take care of your kids. You have to raise your kids. You have to grow your business.
Especially now in 2024,
Oh,
right? Moving into 2025. So I think any great business owner pays attention to the seasons of where an industry or a market is at. And the barbering industry and market isn't where it was 6 or 7 years ago. I think a lot of people romanticize the idea of the barbering industry or barbering business. Like, look at when we went to Fiji, right? Like, when we were explaining to people about what we did, they're like, "Oh, who do you coach?" And we're like, "We coach barbers." And they're like, "Oh, hell of a business that, isn't it?" I'm like, well, see, it's even the public's eye of it is romanticizing an old idea of the industry. You and I are boots on the streets in it, and we've been at the upper end of it for a long time now, and so we can see with a bird's eye view what's actually going on with our industry and with the market. And I pay very close attention to the what kind of season it's in, and I feel like we are in a flat spot. And that doesn't make it bad. It doesn't make it wrong. It just means, as a business owner, we have to adapt and adjust. What's that great saying? He who adapts survives. That's what we do as humans, and I think that's what we have to do as business owners, because businesses only exist to the extent that the market is willing to buy the thing, right? Like, wherever human life is at and societal life is at, that's going to reflect in a business. And I think a great business owner adapts to that. It's like, I'm sure if you ask Warren Buffett about the stock market, it's not just like a one track thing. Else getting rich and picking a great stock would just be easy. Everybody would do it. But a great investor has to pay attention to common occurrences, has to pay attention to, well, what's going on over there? What's going on over there? What's going on over there? And they have to adjust their approach. And that's where I feel like we're at in the barbering industry right now, is we're at a point where we need to start to adjust our approach, if and only if we want great teams. Now, I would say that's most people, because 90% of people that we speak to say they want A players. And I said this on the podcast last week. I want A players. I can't find good team. I can't find talent. It's like, okay, then, well, we need to adjust our approach. And maybe that is going to have to start to come from the inside, not the outside. So it's huge. And how do we do that in the first place? How do we make it attractive enough so that on the off chance an A player does want to come and play, has to be attractive from a brand standpoint. What is the brand offering that's attractive and lucrative for the person that is looking at coming to your business? Because like we've got lots. Let's speak in like supply and demand terminology for a second. Like, once upon a time, there was not a lot of, like, say 10 years ago, between 10 and 7 years ago, less barbershops, lots of people wanting to do it, and lots of clients that wanted it. So for the barbershop, amazing model, because it was like, wow, this is a new hot thing. We're on a rising tide. It's cool. Everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants it. So we can keep bumping the price. And we saw that for ages. Like, barbershops went from charging $20 a haircut all the way through now to what? $100, $150, $300 pretty quickly. Like, it was a pretty monumental shift in not much time. But then what happened was people caught on. Great. Looks like a rising tide model. Fantastic. Then let's all start opening barbershops. Great. And then all the while, the trade school and the training schools thought, great, let's start making more courses. So what do we get? We got lots of barbershops. Then we got lots of people doing it, but we also got the same amount of people wanting it. So all of a sudden we've got a different thing. Now we've got so many barbershops. I think we've got lots and lots of people that have gone through the training systems. There are lots of barbers out there. The dynamic of all those people have changed, and there's still lots of people wanting it. So now we're in this weird conundrum where we've got lots of barbershops, probably running off, and this is painted with broad strokes, running off old models, which is looking back to 6-7 years ago, romanticizing an old model. We've got a big chunk of barbers, but now we've got 80% new blood, 20% old blood, which are like your A players. That's why it's hard to get them, because they're either doing their own thing, or they've realized, I want to do things this way, or they've already got shops. And we've still got the same amount of market demand coming in. So that's the kind of position we're in right now. And it's so important to pay attention to that. And we have to adapt to that. So it's the bit in the middle that I focus on. The bit in the middle is, okay, if we've got, maybe it's like less, maybe it's like 70, 30, 60, 40, whatever it is. We've got like 60, 70% new blood right now. Like a lot of the guys that we come into contact with, I've never even seen or heard of before. There's so much new blood coming into the industry. But what does that mean? They're not going to be overly accomplished. And I don't really know if you could put them in the A player category. Is that my opinion? Kind of. But also, it's a bit factual because, again, well, that's what all the barbershop owners are saying. I can't find good talent. So the proof is in the pudding. So what does that say? Okay, let's go back to the barbershop model. Maybe the barbershop needs to start to have a retention process which includes training. And that's one way to get things to be attractive and to develop talent from the inside out. So there's so much on that landscape to look at, but I think it's really important as a business owner to look at that. Because if you don't, you're going to get left behind. And I think that is what's happening right now. We're seeing what we call like this kind of barbershop salon apocalypse is that turning point and a switching of seasons and a recycling. Some people are going to get left behind and some people are going to make the change and they're going to go for it. And that's what we're seeing in our coaching group right now. People are noticing it and they're going, wow, okay, maybe I need to change something internally. And it's starting to happen.
It's beautiful that you've brought it to that point right at the end there, because for years we've been going to these industry meetings and they're all talking about like the state of the union, you know, what's going on right now in the landscape of the industry and how are things changing and how it's harder to get people in and harder to get team. But there's very little talk about responsibility of doing it better yourself. Because at a certain point, you know, if you look at human psychology and behavior, just offering people more money, which seems like the lowest hanging fruit tactic to keep people around, isn't going to keep them around at a certain point, because if it's just about that, they'll go and work for themselves in their garage. That's what we're seeing right now. It has to be about more than that. So just offering them more money is the race to the bottom. That's essentially the same thing as competing on price for haircuts. And when you compete on price, you compete on product, which is just a space with a chair and a light and a mirror. But when you compete on brand, you can do whatever the fuck you want, and you'll basically have people come to you and beg you for work. It's way different. It's a very different thing, but it takes responsibility on the founder's behalf. It takes responsibility on the owner's behalf, the person who is leading the ship. You know, there's a lot of people who are in that position that don't want to lead because it feels heavy. Well, that's the position that you're in, unfortunately. So there's kind of no other choice. Like, what is the opposite? You're just not leading, you know? And if you don't want to be in it and it feels all too much and too heavy, just don't be in it then. You know, just don't complain about it. Like, you've chosen to be in this situation. I think a monumental change and shift that we've seen in some of our clients, especially when we coach them and help them with their business, is to help them realize that everything is their choice. You do realize that, like, all of this is your choice, right? Like, you can just choose to do different. And if this all feels too much, you can just choose to do different. You can just stop. Like, or you find somebody who is really good at it and you let them run the show. Now, we've had situations in our careers where that should have happened and it didn't. And things started to take a downward turn. And we've seen it play out time and time again. Just because you don't have the leadership qualities doesn't mean you can't own the business. You hire people who do a great job of it. Like, we know plenty of founders and owners and other businesses that hire CEOs. Now, different style of business. I wouldn't say there's necessarily a CEO within a barbering within the barbering industry, unless you're looking at something at scale like Tony and Guy or Oscar. You know, I'm sure Oscar Cullinan could have a CEO in place. You know, he's got a business that allows him to have a mansion on the Gold Coast and a Lamborghini, so he's doing something right. You know, I'd love actually to chat to Oscar again. I thought about him yesterday. I just thought about it, like, because we're moving to the Gold Coast. I just thought, yeah, I want to chat with Oscar and Get him to drive me around in his Lambo.
Yeah, but I think that's a great thing. I think we need to get him back in again and take the conversation in a different direction. You know,
Well, he's great.
Conversation with him. Yeah,
he's a great one. Maybe what we should do is cut up that podcast and like put it out as a clip on YouTube or something, because there's a part in that podcast with Oscar where he talks about the retention models that he's used and the incentivization structures. It's like you have to be giving people some sort of incentivization structure in order for them to stay. Like they have to see future in their progression. Like if they've got no path to progression and they're just maxing out and capping out at like, I'm just doing haircuts and collecting cash, eventually they'll get bored and there's nowhere else for them to go. You always have to be thinking like, where else is there for these people to go? You know, we have it with some of our clients now. They're bringing some of their best team members, best performing team members down the road of education, opening another store, opening another shop, giving them a percentage of the shop, whatever it may be. But the biggest hurdle that I see people not overcoming is wanting the full grape instead of half a watermelon. People just want the full grape instead of half the watermelon, you know, and that's a big issue that I see right now in barbering. If you have great people, great team members, like you were saying, Leigh, A players, they'll go somewhere else if you don't incentivize them well enough. So that's what Oscar's done. He's been able to identify who the key people are on his team and incentivize them in a way where he can open a shop with them or give them a percentage profit in one of the shops. And he's completely scaled himself out of the business. He's probably the person that we know personally the best, like who's done it the best, essentially, in terms of like scaling himself out of it. Yep. So yeah, maybe we need to talk to him again.
I 100% think we need to. I love all the points you were talking on there, and something that kind of came through for me was like, I love that point that you were saying about people have to be able to see future. And I think that's part of a smart business person, is to be able to find ways to create people's futures in advance and find a way to get them to be able to see that. And not only for your team, but for your clients too. Like the best business owners know how to create future in the client's journey with your business. And this is what I mean when I talk about, are your clients a part of your ecosystem? You know, because they can only really be part of your ecosystem if you're creating future for them and with them in your business, because then they become part of the flywheel of your business. So we're not talking about clients today, but we are talking about team, right? And I love where you were going with, you know, unfortunately, if you own a business, it comes with leadership, right? The moment you open the business, you are in a leadership position. Why? Because you're responsible for other people's lives at a certain point. You're providing products for them. And if you have team, well, you're partly responsible for other people's lives. Now, this is something that I heard from Ben Francis, who owns Gymshark, right? He had a great outlook on being a CEO. He said, my job as a CEO wasn't to be the best at everything. It was to hire the people that were the best at the things that I wasn't good at. And I was like, that's so good. Is like, if you can staff your, like, I love it. It's like staffing your weakness, right? Or staffing the areas where you're not so good at. Get good at that. And that is what, I can't remember who else spoke about it. I think it's Charlie Munger spoke about it. I think Warren Buffett speaks about it. Get people around you, be humble enough and have enough humility to get people around you that are better than you at the thing that you want to happen or to do, or that you're just not even that good at, right? Get those people around you and be willing to listen to them and let them do the thing. Because that's one of the functions of an owner and a CEO, is to facilitate the moving pieces and the parts of the business. CEOs are like visionaries. They can oversee the whole thing, bird's eye view it, go, you know what? We need this here. We need this here. I don't know if it's a CEO's job to go, you know, I have to do everything here. It's like, how can I deploy my resources to get those strengths around me? I'm going to staff the weaknesses here, and we're going to build this damn thing together, and everybody can stay in their zone of genius and do what they're really freaking good at. And so if that's training team, okay, well, if you're not good at that, find a way. Find someone who is good at that to teach you, or bring someone in that it has got educational experience, or allocate that to someone in the store or in the shop who has those kind of qualities. I think if we could get to that point, well, straight away you create future for someone. They feel like they're having massive input to the growth of the business, and the future of the team, the future of the business. It gives them so much purpose, so much mission, so much value. I think it's a real recipe for success. I really do.
It's interesting that you brought that up, because even on the call yesterday, we were saying like somebody needs to be the conductor of the orchestra, right? Like they can't be trying to conduct the orchestra and playing the instruments. And that's what we see a lot in barbering, in hair. And I thought about this a few weeks ago, actually, in terms of an analogy. You know, I love analogies and bringing things together and comparing other industries. But there's, at one of the day clubs that I go to here in Bali, where we do like our work and gym and all of that stuff, they're expanding and they're building like new saunas and all that kind of stuff. And I was just listening to all of the like the banging, you know, like just the hammering, and I was like, it's really interesting, right? But you never ever see the owner of a building company on the site doing the work. That might have been where they started, but you never see them on site doing the work, putting the nails in the wall, or, you know, stapling tiles onto a roof. Like, you just don't see them doing the thing. At a certain point, yes, in the growth stages to get it off the ground, what they do is they build a team as fast as they possibly can. They systemize things, they incentivize their team, and then they work on getting more projects and hiring more people.
Yeah. What comes in for me there is there's that great quote. I love that you brought up the conductor. It's like, you know, if one wants to be the conductor of the orchestra, they have to be okay with turning their back to the crowd, because that's what a conductor does, right? It's some people don't want to be that person. Some people want to be seen by everybody to be doing everything all the time, because there's a validation mechanism. But you think of the scenario you just gave there of, like, you know, the owner of the development company, they have to be okay with turning their back to the crowd and not getting the credit for the project. Like, they're not gonna. The guy that laid the bricks can be like, wow, he did a great job of that. And, oh, the guy that did the veneer, oh, you did a great job of that. Oh, it's like, but the conductor, the guy in charge, was the one that put all the pieces together. But he, you know, he's got to be okay with that, you know. And then the big question becomes, like, what is it all about for you? You know,
that's great, because, you know, what would you rather, a pat on the back or money in the bank? You know, what are you building here?
Exactly.
Are you building your identity or your, you know, concept of self or ego, or are you building a good business? You know, and what's the utility of the business then? What do you want it to do for you, right? Like, why do you need to be the front-facing person? And I think that's probably something to explore there for a second. Now, look, it's never too late to turn it around, but I think the biggest, or one of the biggest mistakes that people make as shop owners is not training team early enough to take their clients. You know, and just taking all of the clients and keeping all of the clients and trying to micromanage all of the services to make sure that the clients are happy so that the business stays open. And that's defense. It's not attack. You know, it's not strategic enough, or it's not coming between the defense and attack enough, in my opinion. And if they were to empower their team earlier, install confidence into their team earlier, instill confidence into their team earlier, then the clients would feel it too. You know, you don't want your team to be like second-class citizens within your barbershop, where it's like, oh, you're going to them just because you can't get me. No. Those people that are working with you and for you, they're the ones that are going to give you your freedom. Complain about them all you want. You're not getting your freedom until they're trained to do the same job as you. So sometimes you got to just cut your losses, but Yeah, you might say they can't do it the same as me. Yeah, you might say they don't care as much as me. That's cool. But it's up to you then to provide systems where they can learn from you, your way of doing things, put more time into the training. If you're on the tools doing the job, you can't help them grow. And, what's that one that Dan Martell uses where he talks about, like, if somebody's doing 80% of the work, that's 100% fucking awesome or something like that. It's like, if you have people doing 80% of the work, that's awesome. You have the 10% input at the start and you have the 10% input at the end, or you just work on 20% and you maximize the 80%. So like, we're really talking about leverage here when it comes to like owning a shop, and not a lot of people are doing it because they think, well, I have to be seen to be on the floor and doing the work, when in fact that isn't the case. But if you're just a little bit more open, a little bit more transparent about what it is that you actually are working on, and actually stop trying to just get your time back so that you can sit on the beach and just do nothing. Instead, see, how can I get my time back so that I can train the team, work on the bigger picture, and sit on the beach at the same time. You can do that. You can do it all. You can have it all. We live in an and universe. But yeah, I think people dipping out a little bit too early sometimes is what also can put the business under.
Well, my brain just had a bit of a brainchild of Rick Rubin, Henry Ford, and the modern day barbershop owner. So I've just like kind of smashed this whole idea together. If you look at one of the best companies to ever do it in history, it's the Ford company, right? Henry Ford is one of the godfathers of the Industrial Revolution, right? And I'm not saying the Industrial Revolution is the be all and end all, but there is something to look at there. There is something we can look at. Now, did Henry Ford do all of the work? No. What was he a master of? Systems and processes. And what were his systems and processes? Well, he was one of the first people to introduce mass production. But how did he do mass production? Well, he needed lots of people, and he needed lots of machines, and he needed lots of parts. But what does that? You need to know, what do you need then? You need to know how to do all of those things. So what are the people going to do? And what types of machines are they going to be using? How are they going to use the machines? How are they going to do those things? And then this was the magic of the Industrial Revolution at that time, was also what were the benefits for the people. That was the magic in that. Now, again, I'm not saying it's right, but there's definitely something to learn here. Let's take all those pieces and look at, well, what are we missing in the modern day barbershop world? And I'll get to the reason why I brought Rick Rubin into it in a second, because I think there's a great brainchild being born here. So we take this format of the industrial model, because that's what it is. That's what we're talking about. Scale. Businesses were never seen at scale before this happened. And Henry Ford was one of the pioneers of scale. That's what it's called, mass production, because you could do it at scale, right? And that created another band of wealth that had never been seen before in that way. So what was his main goal? It was to provide systems and processes to gather the troops and create their future in advance for them, so they stuck around, so they felt like they were part of something bigger than them, and they had something to look forward to on the back end of that. So again, there would have been hierarchy structures. You could have worked your way up, which probably looked like more pay structures. They had great benefits afterwards. They probably had pensions sorted out. They probably had insurances sorted out. They probably had all these things sorted out, and they go, absolutely fantastic. Why would I ever leave this? And for a long time, it worked really, really, really well. It worked really well. So where does Rick Rubin come into this? Well, I think I look at my own mind, and I think some of the greatest minds out there, what's your creative genius? So there would be a lot of people out there that think, oh, but I just want to cut hair. It's like, yeah, I'm just a barber. Okay, but be careful, because don't let your label become your limit, right? Rick Rubin would say, well, how can you challenge yourself creatively? Don't get stuck in one belief. The whole idea of life and creativity is to keep creating different, so that we can create new, so that we can do something different. And it's that reciprocal cycle. So if I was a barbershop owner right now and I had team and I wanted to keep them, I'd be looking at all the creative ways that I could create a system like Henry Ford created for my teams to create a beautiful pool of talented barbers that loved what they do. They had great future built into their lives, and they all wanted to stay. Like I would love to create that thing of like, if I asked every one of them, do you want to leave? They'd say, why would I want to leave this? That is what I would be really proud of. I would want to be proud of that. My creativity would all go into that. And that's what my body of creative work would be, is how can I create fantastic systems for these people internally so that they have future, they have purpose, and they never want to leave. And they have all the benefits built in as well. How does that look like for their life? Am I helping them with their bigger vision? Do they just want to be an employee, but is it going to be with the best friggin' employment they're ever going to get? So that's where I see that. Then the modern barbershop owner, I think you could take so much from looking at all that stuff, taking a proven system and model that already works, which is what most scale is modeled off of. Then take a Rick Rubin approach of creativity. So then how can you keep iterating and creating and be proud of that body of work? Because body of work, this is where people get a bit stuck, I think, with creativity. They just think, oh, they put creative in the art category. And we've had this debate so many times about how creativity and art are different things. Let your creativity and body of work and art be those processes. You know, because I was going to hold off saying this earlier, but I'm going to say it now. If you don't want to do that, probably don't open a shop. If you just want to see yourself as, oh, but I'm a barber. Why can't I just get A players? And why can't they just turn up? And why can't they just do this? Probably don't open a shop.
Yeah, just be a barber then.
Just be a barber then. Yeah, because, you know, opening a shop, just because you're a barber doesn't mean you need a shop, right? But if you are going to open a shop, which is you're now stepping into the terrain of business and a business owner, which comes with its own set of responsibilities like leadership, I think it pays dividends to get creative and be proud of that body of work that you create, which is the systems and processes of a shop. Now, I think if we saw that, the industry would be a completely different place. We wouldn't have these issues right now because it would always be adapting and moving. And again, that's what Henry Ford did really well. He kept adapting and moving until there was a monumental societal shift. But even now, the remnants are still around. Like, scale is built off of that model. That's where we got it from. That's where the world got it from. So,
what are your thoughts on the word scale being used in the barbering industry?
In what context?
I just see it being used a lot in marketing, where it's like, scale your business from 0 to 10K a month, or scale your business from 0 to 20K a month. And it's like, to me, in my mind, the word scale doesn't require me doing the heavy lifting.
No.
It requires me doing the thinking. So like, if you're a one-man band, I don't know if scale is the right word to use there, in my opinion. I think maybe it's better to say, like, we will take you from 0 to 10K a month, but you're going to have to work your fucking ass off still. Like,
yeah,
just doing more work and just doing more haircuts isn't going to be the thing that stops you doing haircuts.
Yeah. I think we need to ask people, what do they mean by scale? And what do you attach in the word scale to? Because attaching the word scale to money, to me, you might as well just use the word multiply. Like, do you want to multiply your income? Okay, by how much? You know, because scale to me means something completely different. Scale to me means the thing gets larger, so my life gets easier. Like, that's where I see scale. The thing scales. Therefore, there's more. Therefore, there's more resources. Therefore, my life gets easier.
Yeah.
Now, whether that means I do less or, you know, have more money, whatever that means. But I think, yeah, the big question there is, like, we'd have to ask people, so what do you mean by scale? Do you just mean multiply, or is it got other things attached to it? And if you do mean multiply, you have to be very clear about what that looks like. because, like you say, when you're a one-man band, or you're on the smaller side of things, it's going to be work for a bit. Like it's going to be work.
Yeah, I just think, for me, when I hear the word scale, I also think of time, though. It's not impressive to me that if you can get your business from 0 to 10K a month to 25K a month, I don't care. Whatever number they're using, don't care. But if you have to work exponentially more, and you have to put so many more hours into it, and you have to work more for it, I don't care. It's not scale. To me, scale is keeping the conditions the same and earning more money for you. It's like, that's to me scale in one sense of it, right? Like, it depends on the context. But how can I do the same amount of work that I'm doing now and earn more money? That to me is scale, not how can I put my haircut prices up by $5 and cut 50 more people a week and not have any time for anything else. Like, are you just scaling? Yeah, are you just scaling your income, or are you scaling your actual life? Like, is your life getting better? Because it doesn't matter how much money you make if your life is shit. If you have put yourself in a prison and your life isn't great, then it doesn't matter how much money you have. Like, you'll be spending it on your hospital bill at some point. So, put your priorities as your priorities. Your health should always be your number one foundation. And I think, just chasing the money is just going to be the thing that ensures that you spend it on the things you don't want to spend it on, which is probably the hospital. So yeah, I don't know. That's, as you were talking about the Henry Ford thing there and the Industrial Revolution, I just thought that was an interesting thing, because that's just a buzzword at the moment, right? Like, you have people in the coaching world laughing about it and talking about it, especially the experienced ones, talking about scale bros. And James Kemp said a funny one the other day on one of his posts. He was talking about how scale is just one step up the IQ ladder of passive income. And I thought that was quite funny, because there is no such thing really as passive income. You have to do something to maintain it. Same thing with scale. Like, I think too many people think that it's easy to just have a barbershop, get people in and cut hair and just do nothing. Like, I don't know if that really works that way. No. Unless you hire amazing people, but then you have to be amazing with those amazing people.
Yeah.
Like, you always have to be good. I think people are in this avoidance of just being good, and taking the responsibility of just getting better. It's like what Dan Martell said to his friend in that podcast: you're just shit. Like, you're just not good enough yet. Yeah. And the important word in that sentence is yet. You're just not good enough yet. And that's okay. And it's not that you're not good enough at the job, it's just you're not good enough at the thinking and the other creative pathways, like you were saying.
Yeah, and for what you would prefer to have, right? Like, I use that in my own life. Like, I'm super honest with my own self, and I'm just not good enough yet. But I don't beat myself. See, this is like post-transformation. I don't mean it good, and I'm not good enough in terms of like my own inherent worth. I mean, in terms of like what the market needs and how those things work in the market, and that's fine. And I think I love where you took that, because I think something that has really messed people up is this whole thing that everybody wants everything yesterday. The reason people don't get good enough is because they don't take the time to get good enough. Some things just take time. That's it. Like, some things just take time. It's very hard to be a freak at cutting hair in 12 months. Really hard. Like, you got to line all the chips up properly. You got to be around. Firstly, you got to be around a freak every day. You got to be around like an Owen McCarthy or Josh LaMonaco or someone like that every day from day one. You have no room for bad habits. No room. You have to be around them every day. You have to have a rigorous training schedule, a rigorous feedback schedule. You need to be on it, because if you think that's going to happen in 1 year, you better be on it. It's like trying to race bikes like you used to in 1 year. It's like telling me, I've never done a bike race in my life, Leigh, in 1 year, you're going to be on the starting line for this fucking European race in Belgium. Like, no, it's not going to happen. It might, again, if I line all my chips up properly, I got to get the best trainers, the best nutrition. I cannot put a foot wrong for the next year. So that's what people, I think that's what we've lost, right? Is like that patience piece of like, that's getting good sometimes just takes time. And I think that's what I love about our lives and the way I think about life is like, I'm just locked in for the game. Like every day we're just 1% closer, 1% closer, 1% closer. And I'm just enjoying the ride, you know?
Do you know what's interesting as well is that you brought up the sport thing, because the last few days I've been thinking about this. I've been reflecting upon my own journey in sport and like, what was it that really motivated me to do it, even in the hard times when I wasn't being compensated for it? Now, there was a little bit of wounding in it, but to me, the reward on the other side, if I did get there, seemed worth it. And I think about that with football players as well. And like, how is it that, you know, their management team can come in and absolutely rip them to shreds, yet, and they'll go out the next week and like perform in certain cases, right? Like not in all cases. The reward has to seem worth it on the other side, and they have to buy into the bigger vision of what the team or what the club is about and what the sport is about. And I don't know if barbering is doing a good enough job right now of showing what the reward is on the other side. You know, in general, that's not to pinpoint any one area of barbering. I just don't know if it's really showing the kids like that are coming through that it's worth it to get good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I 100% agree. Totally agree. Because what's being pitched out there now is just like just looking cool and creating haircuts, like cool, but a lot of it's rooted in wounding and trauma. And
but it's also rooted in like youth, you know. I think what you touched on there a minute ago too is like the post-transformation piece. I think that's post-transformation part one. Like there's always going to be part two, part three, part four. Like there's different levels to the transformations. But I think that side of it, in my opinion, is just youth. Like people are just young, right? Like when we were teenagers, we were into certain things. We cared about our image. We looked after our, like I was like making sure my hair was sprayed into place. Like
Same.
there was stuff going on where it's like, what's it going to look like from this angle? And I need to see it from the back. And like, if someone looks at me from the back, are they still going to think I'm hot? Like all sorts of fucking weird shit going on when I was a teenager, right? But I think that's just where that part of the industry is at. But if we don't do a good enough job of selling the next bit in terms of like showing people what's possible once you get past that point, then I don't think it's worth them ever getting past that point, or they might never be brought to the door of awareness to see that there is another way. So
I love it.
I just think like that to me is where we're at. Like, and that's what we're trying to show. Like I put something on Threads the other day. It's like, if you don't take somebody's advice based on how they look, then that's something to look at. You know? And like Rick Rubin is the perfect example of it, right? The guy looks like bloody Gandalf. Like he looks crazy. And Alex Hormozy is probably a good example of this as well. Like it's very purposeful. Like I'm going to look like a bum, but give amazing, great advice. Like if Hormozy polished himself up and looked like different, people, the barbering industry might even be different. You know, I think we're so caught up in vanity in barbering, like, and how things look rather than what things actually are, that we forget the big picture, and we're caught playing then a small game where, you know, and what happens quite often, right, is like an owner will embark on the game of business and they'll be brought into the biggest personal development journey that they can ever go on. Business is the biggest personal development roller coaster that you can ever go on. It will test all of your limits. It will bring up all your limiting beliefs. It will bring up all of the shit that needs to be addressed. But as you address that and you're still dealing with the teenage mindset people, that's going to cause conflict at a certain point, and people want out then because they can't see where it's going to go from here. It's like, well, I've exhausted this and I'm just hanging out with people that I don't want to hang out with anymore. And we don't see eye to eye, and you're always dealing with these kind of kids, and unless you create the conditions for them to grow with you, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, and I'm just reflecting on my own career. You know, I think I love that it's being exposed. This is why environment's so important as well. It's like we've got to be careful about who we're learning from as well. Like the guys that I learned from were a good 15 years older than me. They'd been through levels of transformation, you know, but when I was 15 and 16 years old, they're already in their mid-30s. You know, they've done a shitload in their career. It was so much for me to look at and so much for me to aim for. Wow. Like, look at that, you know, like that was, I think that's what we're missing right now is a lot of that, and that's being ignored. And maybe it's not, maybe it's not looking enticing enough for people, or are people, see, this is where the great debate comes in. Is it not enticing enough, or are people just jaded? People are getting a bit more addicted. We're all a bit more wounded. We're all a bit more traumatized. Therefore, we'll go for the easy fix, which is money, more money, because we think it's going to solve our problems. Just look in a certain way. Now, two lines that have come back into my awareness that you said on the coaching call, which are so powerful when we say them, is like, you know, you can't intervene with a world that you can't see. And you'll never go professionally where you're afraid to go personally. I would even say you never go professionally where you haven't gone personally. And this is massive, right? Because these kids cutting hair, love them to bits, great, do your thing, get creative, make the money, do what you want. But we can't really expect anything else from them, and because they cannot intervene with a world they can't see. They have not done transformation yet. Go spend freaking 5 days with a Buddhist monk meditating, doing nothing but meditating. Tell me how you feel when you come out. Do you still think about that hair is as important as you do right now? Because right now, what most people are doing is, and it's sad, it goes for men and women, they get stuck in the material existence first. Completely different, disconnected from soul, disconnected from spirit. They just think that all that exists is material existence. But once you start to transform and you start to dig deeper into energetics, you realize, oh wow, there's just one layer of things. And that's and I'm gonna go Seth Godin on this. That's the easy layer to fuck with. The material layer is easy. Like I've said, how many times have I said this to you? I think I used to say this to you way before we even started educating together. I could take this industry for all it's worth if I wanted to. I know how to do fantastic haircuts. I know how to sell products like no tomorrow. I could just be making shitloads of money because the material realm is the easy realm to play with. It's easy to fuck with the material realm. Just go buy the clothes. Go buy the clothes, have the cool haircut, pretend like you're like doing some fucking stupid shit to yourself on Instagram to make yourself look different, and all of a sudden everybody freaks out. But the question is it producing the results that people want? And the stats are showing no. Why? Because they've got no confidence, they're sad, they're anxious, they're depressed, they're not making enough money, they don't know where they're going with their careers. Lots of people quit doing hair. And the whole thing's just getting confusing. People can't find talent, they can't find people that stick around. It's just a big mishmash of things. So that's become really big in my mind again right now, is just remembering that people cannot intervene with a world they can't see.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's the same though for the leadership levels, you know. I think that's why if you want to have a great team, and just to start landing the plane here, like if you want to have a great team, if you want to have a great business, it requires you becoming a better version of you and doing the deeper work and understanding yourself so that you can help other people to understand themselves. Because to complain about those people is also to not see yourself, you know, because you were once one of those people. So like, you can't complain about them, you know, and if you are complaining about them with no solutions or resolutions, then there's still self-work to be done. You still need to look at you first. Like, how can you intervene with their world if you're in the same world?
Exactly. It's the blind leading the blind at that point.
exactly. So yeah, the best thing that any leader can do is focus on leadership.
Yep.
I know it sounds simple, but a lot of them are actually focusing on dictatorship rather than leadership, and expectation. There's so much expectation is tied up in it as well. You know, like just expecting people to know what to do, expecting team to know what to do. Like you have to set the expectations, and the expectations are set through the standards, and the standards are set through who you are and your values.
Yep.
And the more that you can see yourself, the more you're going to be able to see other people. So,
it also reminds me of like the backlash we get on the consultation videos. You know, this whole thing about not talking in the mirror freaks people out, right? They get people, I don't see anything wrong with it. And I would love to reply to these people, say like, do you have a fear of talking to people face to face? No. Okay, so why don't you do it then? Because talking through a mirror wasn't nature's choice. It was our choice. We have to choose to do that.
it's the veneer, isn't it? It's
the veneer, right? It's like anything. People can say,
it softens it.
Yeah, everything's a product of nature. Yeah, in a way, but was it nature's choice? Was it God's choice? Or was it your choice? And like, again, you can't intervene with a word you can't see, or you can't go professionally where you haven't gone personally. So that's where that links really well. Oh, you can't say that about not talking in a mirror. Well, have you gone there personally? Is that something you think about every day? I am consciously choosing to talk to humans face to face. Do you have a fear? Does it bring up a fear? Because nature's choice was humans talk to each other face to face, not through a mirror.
Anything, absolutely anything that triggers you is your responsibility. Anything that triggers you to look at is your responsibility. Not saying that I'm perfect. I have things that trigger me every fucking day, but I'm taking the responsibility to look at them and try to do better, you know? And that's the thing. I'm trying to water my own grass so that I can help other people do the same. Because it's very easy to point the finger, right? Like, but every time you point the finger, you got 3 pointing back at you. And it's quite often your responsibility. So if you want a better business, if you want a better life, if you want a better team, you have to be the one to do it. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And a lot of people are just looking for the easy way out. It's like, I have a barbershop, so it should be easy. Anything that comes easy goes easy as well. And like, it's actually not that hard. It's simple. It's not easy. It's quite simple, but it just requires you becoming a better version of yourself. And it can be scary. It can be a scary journey to go down. But trust me, it's a worthwhile journey to go down. And, we're in the process now of hiring and bringing people into our team. And that, I'm sure, is going to be a journey in itself too. But I feel like being around the people we've been around, having the experiences that we've had, living vicariously through a lot of businesses and working with our clients on things, I think we've set ourselves up pretty well to be able to handle the next phase of business. And I think, one thing that's just to finally kind of wrap this up, one thing that's largely overlooked and largely undervalued is transparency and radical honesty. I think it's the only way forward. What is it with barbershop owners and business owners pretending that they have it all figured out to their teams? Like, the more human you can show them that you are, and you're still figuring it out, and we're building this thing together, and it's a project, the better. Come off the defense. Be a little bit more proactive rather than reactive. Involve your team in things. Give them input. Set up good systems for them to win. It's not about you winning. You will win when everybody's winning. When the whole team is winning, you will win. But too many people just make it about them. And if you make it about you, they will never help you. That's my 2 cents. So that's it. Yeah. Any last words, Lee? We'll probably have to do a part 3 of this.
Yeah, because we didn't actually get into what we're going to talk about. But anyway.
Really? What were we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about hiring and firing.
Oh shit! Yeah.
It's fine. Look, to tune in for part 3.
I mean, hiring and firing. Like, again, quickly, let's quick fire to hiring and firing before we do another episode on it. But like hiring, brand, be a magnet, attraction. That's my first thing that comes to mind. Firing, get people out who are bad apples immediately. And quite often they'll deselect when you select yourself and you select your path and your purpose. They will deselect and naturally people will come and replace them. I think this idea of holding on to people is probably the biggest and most outdated idea and concept in the hair industry. Is like, we just need to hold everybody that we have. Like retention isn't always a good thing.
And have a system and process for both. Have an onboarding process, have an offboarding process, have the humility to have a feedback system at the end on your part and on their part. Let them tell you what was going wrong.
Yeah.
If you want to fire them, make sure you let them know, let them have their say. And if they're leaving, make sure you ask them for feedback. It'll make you a much better leader.
Yep, sure will. So
Fantastic.
that's it, guys. We'll be
Powerful
back.
Episode.
We'll be back with another episode soon. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Isn't that what all the influencers say?
That is.
Yeah, okay. The influenzas. All right, guys. Nice one. Let us know what your thoughts are. And if you'd like us to talk about anything or ask questions, we'd love some feedback, key takeaways, insights, what you got out of the episode. That's what really kind of fires us up. Not like how great the episode was. It's like it might have been shit, yeah, but like what was useful to you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right.
See you next time.